Today we're going to be putting LEDs in pretty much every module you will come across on the left hand side of your dash on your 2003 to 6 or 07 Classic GMT 800. This includes Tahoes, Escalades, Yukon, Yukon XL, Silverado, pretty much all of them. So these are all we're going to be covering. So we've got headlight switches are all the same, one style, 4-volt steer, Quadrasteer buttons. Those are only found on 02 to 05, and then we have the stability track and parking sensor, and those are found on the older ones as well from 02, but these are the 03 to 06 versions. And we have all three styles of your fog and wiper combinations. For the SUVs, you have rear wiper and fog. For the trucks and I believe Escalade EXTs and Avalanches, you have bed lights, cargo light, and fog, and then some base model trucks just have bed light. Here's what you're going to need. So a number 1 Phillips screwdriver for the headlight switch. A marker is going to keep track of polarities for us, marking the boards. Pair of cutters. These are flush cutters. They're for trimming the legs off the LEDs. And we're going to need the LEDs, obviously. So these are 5mm and 3mm LED cubes for these vehicles. So these are dimmable from 5 to 14 volts, no resistor, it's all built in. And I'm going to leave a link in the description for these. These are great. And we're going to be putting blue in today. Put these to the side. I recommend some Q-tips for cleaning the boards and some alcohol. I've got some 99% here. You can use anything from 70 to 99. A couple of tweezers and pry tools. So I like these metal pry tools. You can get them at Harbor Freight or the iFixit kit, stuff like that. They have them. These are fantastic. 2 pairs of tweezers. One really small set so we can get the buttons out of the fog light switches, and a nice gripping set of tweezers so we can keep our hands away from the soldering iron when we're putting some LEDs in. And I highly recommend these items here. These are not needed, but highly recommended. Some solder wick or a solder sucker. A lot of cheap soldering iron kits will come with this. This will be a fantastic tool. And then flux. Highly recommended. Don't cheap out here. This is going to make your life so much easier. Get some no clean flux and it's fantastic. And obviously some solder. I use leaded solder. You can use unleaded and that's a little bit better, but make sure to clean your hands afterwards. Stuff's not great for you, but it works so much better. And then to power and test the LEDs on the modules here, I have a benchtop power supply. I set it to 14 volts. If you don't have that, here's some options. I have a 9-volt battery. Just wrap some wire around the top and we can do the test pigtails with that, or a 12-volt tool battery like this Milwaukee M12. Do not use an M18 or something like that. Make sure it's 12 volts. Take a spade terminal, and I have marked the sides on this just for this Milwaukee M12. So this side is negative and this side is positive. So there you go, like that, and we can test it that way. That's super easy. So let's get started. Now for soldering everything, I'm going to be using a set of helping hands. This is a little larger version than you've probably seen, but you can get the little cheap ones with just these 2 clamps, which will be plenty enough for doing this for less than $5. Or if you've done any soldering before, you probably have one around. So put that to the side. Let's get our wiper switch and our metal pry tool. 2 clips on each side. We're going to push our fingers away from the front housing on the back while we pry these clips up like that. Flip it over, same thing. There we go, and it's open. That to the side. So now we get our small tweezers, because this board will not come out without this button coming out. So little hole here and here. We're going to push in with the tweezers, pull up on the button, and push towards the button. You'll hear a little click on each side. Button comes out, set it aside. Pull the board straight up, set this aside as well. And now we have a look at the board. So for polarity wise, and if you're going to test it, here's the little test pigtail I cut off the one in the truck. So you'll see these pins are marked A through J. So pin D is your negative and E is your positive. So this will correspond here. Put our connector in like that, and you'll see right there I have it lined up. So the brown with the white stripe is positive, black with white stripe is your negative. So there you go. So to test this, you can see here are the little bulbs here. 2 pins for that one and 2 pins for this one. I've already marked it, but I'll show you how to figure this out if one yours is different or you just want to know. So I'm going to take my test leads. Remember, you can use your Milwaukee or M12 sort of battery or 9-volt. I'm using my power supply. Negative to negative. Mine's at 14 volts and positive to positive. And these bulbs are both burnout, of course. So we're going to take an LED. So this will work if they're burnout or not. And the 2 little pins here, just take them across. Long leg is positive and short leg is negative. So just kind of lay them across. You know, that'll be if it doesn't work. So we already have it, already know it here. So this side is your positive. And then we come down here. Lights up. This side is your positive. So we can disconnect this. Put that to the side. I'm going to put it in my helping hand setup here. Lock the board in. That's centered. And now we get our flux out. So put a little bit of flux on both the pins, just a touch. And we take our soldering iron and we can pull the bulb from the back. And with the wedge tip, you can usually get both pads at once. Makes it super simple. That's trash. And that is trash. So now we need to get the solder out of these holes. So this is where I'll show you the solder wick method versus the solder sucker method. So take some solder wick with your iron, and you can see the solder coming up the wick. And there you go, hole's clean. You could either do that, or most cheap soldering sets, like I said, will come with this little solder sucker. So get your iron ready and push that little pusher down, and then this is your release button. So we'll want to heat up the area and then quickly go over it and push the button at the same time. You see that clean the hole as well. So same thing on these 2. And just doing one at a time here. Oh, got one of them. There we go, got both. Put that to the side. Now we take our LEDs. We already know our polarities. So take our cutters. Take note of them before you cut it. So this one we're going to want positive that way. So I like to cut them right before this little ridge here. So like that. And then push it through the other side of the board. It should go through with no resistance. Hold it with one finger. Get a little bit of solder on your iron here. And we're going to heat that up. Second, there we go. The other one. There we go. And you'll know if you got a good joint or not. So I don't know if you can tell, those are a like a shiny silvery color. So if you get a cold solder joint, it'll be kind of like a matte, or you'll see little cracks, and that'll tell you you did not give it enough heat, leave it on there long enough. So let's take our other LED. So these are the 5mm ones for this switch. This one has to go that way, positive this way. Cut it before the ridge. And then push it up through the board. Sometimes I put it up a little bit so I can see. There we go. Bring it back down. Little dab of solder. Hold on there for a couple seconds. And then to the other side. There we go. So now we can test this with our harness here. So I've got this marked here. This pin goes there. Let me flip it over for you so you can see better. There you go. Both LEDs are working. And everything looks good to go. Plug that. We can take this out, and what we're going to do is clean up as much flux as we can. So this no clean flux isn't going to be a problem if we leave it, but we want to clean up as much as we reasonably can. So with your alcohol and a Q-tip, or I've used a toothbrush before, a really soft bristle one, and really clean that. That is pretty good. And then inspect all of your joints, make sure no cold solder joints. And now we can reassemble in reverse order. This just goes in here like that. Kind of have to finesse it in there. And then put your button back in. Only goes in one way with the hole facing your LED. Just like that. Put the face back on. And one more time here, I'll show you the test. Oh. Here you go. So turn the lights off real quick. There you are. Alright, so real quick, gonna go over the other two versions of that switch. The fog light, cargo light, and just the cargo light. So they come apart just the same way as the other one, so I'll spare you that. No button on this one. This comes straight out. Mark the board here. So this pin is positive and this pin is negative. Look on the other side here. Same thing. So test that. Did the same process and figured out that this side is the positive and this side is the negative. So exact same soldering process on this. Bulb goes in just the same way. So put that to the side. And then here is this one with the button. Took the button out, same way the other one came out. Super easy. Board comes straight out. Mark the board here. We have it from A to F. So pin, let's see, pin D is negative and pin E is positive for your testing. Bulbs go in exactly the same way. On the back here, this particular board, positive on the end and positive right here. So these are the two pins and exact same process. So now we're going to move to the parking sensor and StabiliTrak buttons. So these both will come apart the exact same way. Let me show you. Get your metal pry tool, start on the side which the connector's on. Kind of put your fingers pushing against it like that. Pry out. Same thing on the other side. And I don't know why, but for some reason, if you start on this side, it's much harder, so I always start on this side. So this comes straight apart. Be mindful of the spring here. So pop this spring out, put it to the side, and this little spring holder here, put that to the side. And this board will just pull straight out. But before we do that, I want to show you the test pigtail on this. So cut the locking tab off, but it's keyed one way. So again, we've got black and white stripe is your negative and brown and white stripe is your positive. So we correlate that with the position the board's in when we take it off, like that with those 4 pins. And I've already marked it here, so this pin would be your positive, this pin would be your negative, and you can just, with these boards, you can just trace it right to where the bulb is. So this side is going to be your positive and this your negative. So Let's pop this in the holder. And same process as before, a little bit of flux. Get both the pads here and pull right out in the trash. Get our solder sucker here on the holes. Oh, didn't get it all. A little hard next to that pin. This might be one of those areas where I would recommend to use the wick instead. So I'm going to use the wick on that hole. So then every section of wick, as soon as it's filled with solder, you got to cut it off or it's barely going to pull up anymore. So get it in the hole. There we go, that hole's cleared. And a little bit left in that one. Sometimes the last bit of solder could be a little tricky. There we go, I believe I got it. So now that we know our polarity, we're going to take our larger 5mm LED. You can use a 3mm in this, but I like how much brighter it is. So we're going to want to make sure we do is, you see the spring holder, LED will not fit through it. So let me throw that. So put this in the spring holder first, and then push the LED through the other side of the board. Make sure, remember which side's polarity. You don't have to cut it on this one yet. It's easier to do this like this. Push it through the board. There we go. Holes aligned. Get your... and then push the pins on the spring retainer in. And now, so since this only shines out one way, the depth at which this light goes in really doesn't matter. So if you want to just leave it flush with where the spring cutoff is, that's fine. So now it's usually easier to solder this before we cut the legs off. So put a little pressure on the LED. Get that leg soldered on. A little more solder on the other one. There we go. Put a little bit more on the first pin. There we go. And now, you want to cut them as flush as possible. There's one. And there is two. That's just the bulb holder that fell. Alright, so let's clean this up real quick. Don't have to worry about the marker if you marked it, but just the flux. There we go. Take this out of the holder. That spring retainer back down. And then we're going to put this back together. So your spring on your spring retainer. You'll see the button here will correspond with the little pad in there. And then this indicator LED goes in this little pocket over here. So back together like that. Get the back housing right on there. And push it back together. All good. So plug our harness in if we want. If not, just put it in the vehicle to test it. That too. Positive is your brown, And there we go. So now the exact same process is going to be the stability button. The only difference is going to be the actual harness here. So I'll show you that real quick. So it's black, they're color coded, keyed one way, same thing, comes apart easier from this side. Lock back in. These ones can be a little tricky sometimes. There we go. Comes apart. At the side, same thing. Got your spring retainer, the bulb. Take this apart, and I've marked this one here. So your positive pin will be this one down here, negative up here, and on this side, these two pins are the bulb, positive, negative. Same exact soldering process on this as the other one. So just follow that and you will be good. So now we're going to do the headlight switch. So pull this selector knob straight off, and usually you can get it with your hands, but sometimes it is a little stubborn. So what I like to do is get a cloth and a pair of pliers. The cloth is just to protect the actual button here, and pull it straight off. Comes right off, put that to the side, flip it around to the back, and we've got 4 Phillips screws here, 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 and here. Back housing piece comes off, set it to the side. Don't lose your screws. And now the center piece will pull straight up and out. So sometimes what's going to happen to a lot of you is that this stock bulb is going to be melted in here, so it'll actually take a little bit of force to pull this up, but don't worry, you're not going to break it. So you just pull up and get it out of here. And now you see the original bulb is in here with a twist lock here. So we're going to twist that out. That's trash. And we're going to pull this center piece out straight up that attached to the knob. Set that to the side. And then you can see here how badly melted this bulb is. This is supposed to be the bulb. So we're going to take out this diffuser piece here so we can cut that out of there. So take some of your tweezers or your pry tool here, and on the side you can usually get in on this side, pry against the casing and pull up, and this will start to come out. Now we can get in here and a little more. Sometimes it'll go flying, and you see how badly melted that is. So I'm just going to take my cutters here and cut as much of that out as I can. So I was not trying to do that. And then I like to cut out as much of the melted plastic as I can. It's not a huge deal, but it helps from it crumbling apart and making your LED color a little bit different, but that's usually pretty good. So now look inside, make sure there's no debris in here, and if there was that you need to shake out, there's this little pin down here that will come out if you flip this upside down. So if you need to, put your thumb over this part and the little ball here and just shake it out, because sometimes, most of the time, there'll be a lot of debris in here. So now we can put this diffuser back in, just like that. It goes between that groove. Just kind of convince it back in there. There we go. Back in business. So we put this to the side. Now look at the actual board. Again, there's some random gunk and whatnot here. Clean that off. And then this is where we're going to solder the LED to. So get this in the helping hands. Just like that. So on every single LED switch, or headlight switch, The bottom pad here is going to be your positive. So let me mark that real quick. Just for reference, that's your positive. But if you want to test it on a test harness, this is the test harness. Again, you're going to have brown and white is your positive, and in this case, this wire is just solid black is your negative. So that you can use to test it. And now we're going to take some flux and prepare these pads because the LED is going to be sitting up off of it and not through hole like the other ones we were doing. So put a little bit of solder on your iron, a decent bit. Spread all over the pad on each one, just like that. Now we're going to take our LED, take note of which side's positive. I bend them out a little bit, and we're going to cut this about halfway because we don't want it to touch the plastic diffuser that's in there. So we're going to cut this about right there. Doesn't have to be super scientific. And then we're going to start by soldering down one side, and then we'll bend it over to the other. So get it kind of close. Make sure you hold it. This amount of solder takes a second to harden. Now we've got the other side really close. You can see here. And solder that in as well. And we're good to go. Now take your Q-tip again. We're going to clean this flux residue off with your alcohol. And especially you want to keep it off of all these gold pads here because that is what controls all of your headlight settings. So if you get flux on them, it might interfere with it a little bit. And now, if you ever experience some flickering of your light, you can check to these two pins, go directly over here, and sometimes from the factory you'll have cold solder joints right here. So a lot of times when I do these, I'll go in and reflow with solder just these two joints, and that'll fix that issue. So we can take this off. And keep in mind that only this side of the headlight switch lights up. A lot of people see this face here, and you would think that these two would light up, but there is no light here from the factory. So I'll put it back together. We take our knob piece here, align it just like that, and now you see this shaft in the center is going to have to align up with this hole here. So as we put this on, we're going to want to take a note and grab the other side where the knob goes and line it up here. There we go. It's centered. Put the back piece on and then screw this together. Once the screws are in, the knob only goes on one way, just like that. Now we can test it. Get our harness here, or just like I said, put it back in the truck. Positive to brown, negative to black. There you go. This face is a little damaged, but you can see here only this side lights up. This side's not supposed to light up. So now we're going to move to the 4-wheel-drive switch. Now this is going to cover your 4-button auto or the 3-button manual non-auto. And usually these two have the exact same boards inside and still have a spot for the 4th button. So take this apart with our plastic pry tool. 3 clips on either side. Push against the back housing here. Pry away. On the clips, flip it over, same thing. There we go. Now you'll have this little light diffuser that goes on the board. Put that aside. So this is where you'll need the smaller 3mm LEDs. So we're going to put this into the board holder. There we go. So for testing purposes, I've already marked out here. I don't have a harness for this one. I just use the pins. We have the third pin down is your positive, and the one all the way at the end is your negative for testing. So, now that we have that, let me lock that in a little tighter. These two are through hole, and this board does not come out of this back housing. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just crush these bulbs. So do this, you know, over a trash can or something or whatnot, and just break the bulb. It seems counterintuitive, but this is the best way to do it. And what you're going to have is just the two leads of the bulb sticking out. So, dump that. You know, got a little piece of the plastic here, little piece there. There we go. Alright, separate the leads like that. So, there's going to be two ways to go about this. The way that I like to do it is we're going to actually pull these pins out. So we're going to take some flux on each one of them, and we're going to take our tweezers here with some grip to them, and we're going to hold the pin with our tweezers and pull outwards as we heat it up to pull it out of the hole, like that. There's two. There's three. And there's four. Now that we've got that, we can use our solder wick. There we go. Alright, so now this is where we're going to take our 3mm LEDs, and this is why I really like to actually pull those leads out instead of what you would do in the other case is just put a small dab of solder on each of these pins with the other one still in there, and then attach the LED to that. But I believe this holds them a lot better, and it's the right way to do it. So for testing here, we can hook up our test harness. Like I said, I don't have the actual pigtail for this one, so I'm just going to attach my jumper wires to the actual pins. Take our LEDs, there we go, positive up and positive up. So mark that here for video reference. We're going to take our 3mm LEDs and we're going to cut them about half length, so like that, and then put them in each of the holes. Oh, power it off first. And this is where you can either use your fingers or use your tweezers here, so that way your hands aren't close, and just kind of hold it right over the pins. There we go, got one side. Roughly halfway. Positive up. One pin in. And the other one looks pretty good. There you go. Remember to inspect your solder joints. We're going to clean up here. Before I do that, I'll Well, no, I already know that's right. Clean up the flux. There we go. Take this out. And just a quick note on the four-wheel drive switches. So where the bulbs go in and the old ones melted, you can see there's some melted plastic here. And since that's where the LEDs sit, that will make them a little bit dimmer or obstruct them, change the color. So it's best to scrape off as much of that as you can. Now we're going to take our diffuser here. See, it only goes in one way like that, and this is why we use the smaller LEDs, because the 5mm would not fit in this. Put this back together. Just like that. Test it real quick. There we go. So now this was the 4-button. So the 3-button style, I have one here. The board is identical. So same process. Third one down, positive. The one on the end is negative. And same kind of soldering process. And sometimes the holes are oriented differently, but as long as you have the polarity to test it, you can figure that out, no problem. Now we're going to do the 4-wheel steer or Quadrasteer button, and I believe these are the same from 2002 to 2005, and all the years Quadrasteer was offered. So let me get the test pigtail ready, so let me show you that real quick. So this is the Quadrasteer pigtail. I doubt you'll have one of these, and I don't recommend cutting one because of how rare they are, but I did have one. That was off of a bad harness. So again, we have brown with white stripe is your positive, and solid black is going to be your negative. So to get this open, super simple. 4 tabs, 2 on each side. Pry the clips away from you. The other side, clip back in. There we go. That's apart. So we take this out, this board pulls straight out, and this is our one illuminating bulb here. These 3 are your indicators. So what's cool here is you can also put regular 3-volt LEDs in place of these if you want to change your indicator colors for the actual Quadrasteer settings, the 2-wheel, 4-wheel, and 4-wheel with towing. So on my personal one, I did red, green, and then blue, just to be a little different. But so this is super easy. On the back from our harness here, I marked it. So this is your positive pin, so we'll put the harness up here. It's just like that. So this pin is your positive, and the one directly next to it is your negative, and they go right to that bulb. Super easy. And on this, obviously, you can see here. So these are the 2 pins, so positive and negative. So we're going to put this in our holder here. A little bit of flux. And pull that right out of there. Get our solder sucker and or solder wick. There we go. Both holes look good. So now this one we can use a 5mm. So we can cut before we put it in, makes it a little bit easier sometimes. So positive up, And same kind of concept, we're going to cut like the fog light switches right before the little ridge here. But this isn't super important on this one, so push the board up so we can see. And actually on this one, the holes are a tiny bit farther apart, so bend one of your leads a little bit. There we go. So now, just like the others, hold it while you solder it so it doesn't move. There we go. Put a little more on the other one. There we go. Clean that up. Inspect the joints. Pretty good. There we go. Put that back in the back housing. Snap the front together, and now note, so when you do something like white, this is one of the ones where there's a blue film over the lighted area, so if you put a white in here, it will be kind of like a light blue. Put that back together. Connect up our harness, black to black, red to brown. Plug that in. There we go. Super cool. So that covers pretty much every module you're going to find on the left side of your dash. If you have another one that I haven't seen, leave a comment and I can help you figure out the polarity for it. And I'm going to have a link in the description that I'm going to be adding polarity charts to, and all of the ones that I just covered are already there, and stuff for the climate controls, cluster, stuff like that. Door switches will be coming soon, and more videos on that. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.